sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of records direct to fan. And it was really, really powerful because they leaned into it and they didn't really worry all that much about how it impacted their individual brands.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice. This is a podcast where we cover growing and monetizing a fan base and building a music career with marketing strategies that are working right now based on what we see every single day in our music marketing agency and across our community of thousands of artists and bands. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. This is episode 390. We're going to be talking about artist collaboration today. And I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. And with me, as always, is Circa. Cirque, what's up, pal?
Not a whole lot, dude. I'm ready.
Me too, man. Today we want to talk about artist collaboration, how it applies to your marketing, where you can get the most benefit from collaborating with other artists or other parties. And I want to start today's episode with a story. This is a fun one that I think will land with a lot of people and also set the stage for just a larger conversation around artist collaboration. Years and years ago, when I was just starting to get into digital marketing and I was doing digital marketing and doing music production and kind of shifting back and forth between those two things, working with bands and starting to work with businesses on their marketing, I had a client. It was my very first digital marketing client, and it was a nonprofit. It was a charity. And I was tasked with trying to make a very small nonprofit that really had no national reach at all a big donation push for the holiday season, right around like Giving Tuesday. And through the power of collaboration, I was able to help them make $250,000 over the course of like a week. And that was by leveraging another partner charities that they paired up with. It was by leveraging that charity's audience and doing email marketing and making offers and driving a whole bunch of donation revenue. And it was really cool. And there was a big windfall and everybody was very excited, especially me, who was just getting used to digital marketing. And actually, this is a fun story to tell because I did a Facebook Live about this probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months later. And Cirque actually jumped on that Facebook Live, and that was what got us talking about Entrepreneur and what he had going on in the fledgling company that now is a beautiful business partnership between the two of us. So it's a fun story to tell, and it was an early win for me as a digital marketer, but there are definitely lessons learned about collaboration from that story that I think artists can take away, and we wanted to share them here with you today. But I wanted to kick off with that story. Cirque, do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Super cool, serendipitous.
Yeah, definitely very, very interesting, a cool story to share, one that I hold close to my heart. But I wanted to kick off with that story to talk about two things that don't often get brought up when artists think about and talk about collaboration with other artists. Do you want to collab, bro? Kind of stuff. And that is brand association, and audience sharing. These are kind of like the two most powerful parts of collaboration, in my opinion, when it comes to what artists can do together when they work on a project together and when they want to get like the maximum amount of wins from it, you know, squeeze the most juice out of it. This can be really, really powerful, especially if you're a smaller artist that might be working on a collaboration with a slightly bigger artist, or if you're just working with another artist or a brand potentially that has the same amount of reach as you. Because what's cool is you can effectively double the amount of audience or more that you might have access to because of a joint venture, a partnership, a collaboration that you're doing. And that's really huge. And I think that it often goes untapped, you know, especially when it's just like, oh, we collaborated on some music together. And that's kind of where it stops. There's so much that can be done with audience sharing when it comes to audience sharing across advertising platforms, audience sharing across email marketing, which was what I was referring to and referring back to in the nonprofit story I shared, there was so much email list sharing going on that really benefited here. And I think a lot of artists miss out on that.
Yeah, I think probably like if I were to sum up like why are you listening to this episode, like what's going to be your takeaway, it's going to be that like you can be intentional with your collaborations such that it holistically benefits like your whole music career, like the whole span of it. And I think initially, like if I were talking to an artist friend about this topic, there would be resistance. Like I already know there would be resistance, and it would be in the form of like, well, this is my artwork. And if I choose to collaborate with someone, it's from an artistic decision-making framework, not from a business decision-making framework.
Yeah.
And I think that like the way that I would help a friend understand how it can be both and how they might be arbitrarily making this distinction. It might be a distinction without a difference.
Yeah.
In the sense that artists are already very familiar with doing this for business reasons, but they just don't think about it in this lane. But if you think about it, like, first of all, hip hop artists are already very familiar with collaborations for business purposes. If you become a sufficiently large hip hop artist, nothing to sneeze at source of revenue for you is features. People will pay you for a verse to come feature on their song. Some artists are a bit more discerning about who they'll sell features to, but certainly there's compensation involved in most features in the hip hop world, in the R&B world. It's a very common practice. And the thinking there for smaller artists buying features from larger hip hop artists, first of all, like it's very rarely within the grasp of a smaller hip hop artist to hire out like someone who's on the radio or someone, back in the day it was on the radio, or someone who is, has a very large following. It's more difficult, and it might be with like outside of their grasp financially. So they'll typically pick someone who's a little bit more middling. And when I was growing up and as like a hip hop artist, early on, it always seemed dumb to me because it's like, this person's not going to promote you. So what you're hoping is that someone like some fan of theirs is actively seeking out everywhere they were featured on, which is rarely the case. Like, I don't know all of the features of my favorite hip hop artists, like on like smaller artists' records. So like the trade-off is not there. Like, you're spending money and it's not going to bring you anything except prestige within the circle you already influence. So you're not going to gain new fan base. But so that's just one realm in which like it's already an established thing, and it's actually rarely worth it because it's not done in the way we're talking about. Another avenue where every genre knows about this already is touring. You're all like, the whole artifice of tour features, like opening acts, like it is presumed that they paid to get there. It's already assumed by most artists that if you're like supporting act on some tour, you paid in.
Right.
Like it's a well-worn practice. Everyone knows about it. It's not even a dirty secret. And people don't seem to have a problem with that. When it comes to like making a record, it's a lot more touchy of a subject. There's like your artistic integrity is like invoked, which I find a little bit inconsistent because it's like, well, maybe if you were going to make one record for the rest of your life, like I could understand the difference between a tour and a record.
Yeah.
But you're not going to. You're going to end up feeling very silly about decisions you made about preserving the sanctity of a given record towards the end of your career, when you have tons of records, too many to count, too many to remember. Maybe not like full feature-length albums, but certainly songs,
Yeah.
Certainly features and EPs, and this track was appeared on and all that shit. Like, you're going to have more than you can possibly even like catalog. It will begin to feel more and more silly to have hard principles in this direction. Maybe for your feature-length debut, whatever, like your LPs, like you place a lot more emphasis on like, well, everything's an artistic decision here. But generally, I think you should, if you find that this is some kind of like, it is sacrilegious to like think about a feature, a collaboration as a business decision. Hopefully I provided some good reasons here why like, it kind of is a business decision already. And maybe it's just like a quirk of our thinking that it became this like highly preserved artistic thing. So let's just getting that out of the way. What we're positing is that like if done right, it can actually be a very advantageous business decision that might not at all be in conflict with your artistic inclination either.
You know, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do think that that is a bit of an insidious mentality that has slipped its way into the psyche of so many artists, where the idea of collaboration at its core is a business practice, right? It's a joint venture. It probably always has been in music. I think that the I'm a cool guy or I'm a cool girl artist thing that surrounds so much of music has kind of poisoned collaboration, or the benefits of collaboration, because artists will stop short of doing everything that they like. Take a record, for example, right? Artists might stop short of pulling out all the stops on marketing a collaboration in the same way that they would market their full length record or their debut or a live record or something like that. Anything that they might launch, they don't launch as hard. And I see this all the time. It's really interesting. Like, they stop short of putting their foot all the way down on the gas. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think that the cool guy mentality is what.
Well, it's like, let's just so we can have a more productive conversation with you, the listener, like, let's get this out of the way, right? There is no artistic integrity with respect to collaboration. Da Vinci didn't collaborate with anyone, dude. Michelangelo didn't collaborate with anyone. You know, C.S. Eliot didn't have any features, right? Like, the Shakespeare didn't have any like open verses, right? This is all Shakespeare, okay? So the whole concept of like artistic collaboration is artificial kind of to begin with, unless it's something like that's your group, like Simon and Garfunkel, or a whole album being a collaboration, which again, like a whole album being a collaboration is also a great opportunity for like some intent with respect to business. But just to say that like while there may have been team ups on entire works, there are no features, there are no collaborations natively. It's almost like when artists like try to talk about like preserving the sanctity of their album and the album as an art form, which is again entirely a marketing concept. Albums didn't exist. They were put together by record labels to make more money off of singles no one liked. Like that, there's a whole reason that there ever was such a thing as an album, and it's so named an album because it was literally a binder of 45s that you would flip through.
Right.
So they would put all these singles into a binder, and that's your album. That's why it's called an album. So anyways, just to say that, like, let's get all that out of the way to say that, like, well, if we're going to collaborate with another artist that's distinct from us and we are not teaming up to form a new group, that's actually something that has no origins, like, that are anywhere close to the origins of like music or even recorded music. That's a very odd outgrowth of the modern era. And so it can't possibly be organic. It isn't organic. It's not an artistically organic thing to do. And so given that there is no sanctity of the collab to ruin, okay, what do we mean when we say like have some business intent behind it? And I think, like, again, I'll point to the hip hop example, which is that, like, a kid from my neighborhood would get like a verse from Jadakiss, and like, is Jadakiss gonna like promote this to his fans? Is he gonna mention it while on tour? Is he gonna mention it in his next interview? No, not in a million years. His fans will never know it existed. It's on you entirely to make other people aware. And it was already on you to make other people aware of your music. So you didn't gain anything new. You're just out $10,000.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that can very often happen when collaborating. But if you're collaborating with someone who you identify with musically, so we can smuggle some of that artistic integrity back in. If you identify with them musically and your fans identify with them musically and they don't make you cringe and you actually want to collaborate with them, well, chances are that your fans have like a huge overlap. If you made a Venn diagram of your fan base, is like they're very much similar people, and they've been out there finding people who like their music, and you've been out there finding people to like your music, and you didn't hit on the exact same populations, especially if you live in different parts of the globe or even different parts of the country or even different parts of the state. There's different fans in these fan bases, but you can merge them. You can share them. and form them into one cohesive, you eliminate all of the non-overlap, right? You just make one circle, right? And so that's really the opportunity that's available to you when you collaborate with someone who are, from an artistic integrity standpoint, you'd want to collaborate with anyways. Now, there's also like crossover where you're collaborating, like Jay-Z, Linkin Park, right? like you're introducing fan bases to other forms of music that you admire, that pair nicely with yours. That's totally also something that can happen. But just speaking of the base case where you're collaborating with someone who's in your genre, who's very much like you, the opportunity is vast for you two to share audiences. These days it's going to be like captive audiences, owned media, your email list, to a lesser degree, like your social media audience, but they're harder to direct. But like these are all opportunities that present themselves. So when you're negotiating about a collaboration, I think having business and audience sharing as a first-class citizen of that conversation, it's introduced early on. There's intention. There's a plan. You guys are talking about how you're going to do it before you're even ready to put the record out. That's a great place to start from because it's not a surprise to anyone. It's something that was intended from jump,
That's such a great point because that eliminates, if you're talking about it from the jump, that eliminates the surprises later that might lead to a conversation that looks like, oh, but what about the artistic integrity? And it loops back around to that thing that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
Additionally, like when thinking about collaboration at like the minimal level, right? Like a feature or a collab, like a single collab or something like that. When you don't look for the maximal benefits to both parties, what that also does is it kind of limits the ability for the collaboration to be dreamt up any further into the future, where could eventually be a full length or a merch run or a tour or anything like that to go along with it when you're not taking the business perspective seriously from the jump. It limits the ability for the future to have wins as well. And I think that that's something that's important to consider, especially because like so many collaborations might start just in a room where you're writing a song with somebody or you're working on a track. I think like those initial spark moments can lead to really cool stuff for artists. And just to share another story from the agency, a few years ago, we were working with an artist that was doing an entire collab record that eventually turned into a series of collab records with an artist that was of a similar size to them. And when we were marketing that, like they had an entire store that was branded for this collaboration. It sold hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of records direct to fan. And it was really, really powerful because they leaned into it and they didn't really worry all that much about how it impacted their individual brands. Now, granted, they had a lot of overlap. There was a lot of similarity between the artists, but it doesn't matter. As long as you're aligning from the jump on what you want to do, these kinds of things can happen. There was another artist recently, and this goes into talking beyond just artist collaboration. And I think talking about collaboration with brands as well. We have another artist that we were working with recently, actually, who the first thing that we got to participate with them in at IndieX from a marketing perspective was launching a merch line with a very popular large merch brand that they collaborated with on designing merch. So that was really, really powerful as well. And they made a lot of money, more than they were used to making on e-commerce sales, because they partnered up with this brand in their collaboration. And what that did for them is their fans now associated them with a brand that they already thought was cool. And this was something that they hadn't done before. And so that kind of thing is really powerful as well, and kind of takes us, I think, a little bit further into this conversation beyond just artist to artist collaboration, where you can think about artist to brand. And if you wanted to do brand partnerships and collabs, what you should think about is, what kind of associations am I building with my fans and also with customers of the brand that I'm collaborating with? What can I do with those associations? How can I use that to build, a sense of trust, a sense of community, and ultimately drive sales with it? That can be really, really powerful as well. And that loops back to the charity example in the story that I gave. Is the partnerships that they built and that I leveraged as a marketer were all around very similar interests. It was all kind of in like similar, it was like religious veins at the time. It was all very like similar religious based charities. And it worked really well because there was alignment there.
Yeah. I think that what you just said is actually like, I didn't even think about it before, but it's not to be understated at all, is that like when you're an artist selling merch, one of the conceits here is that like merch represents a healthy profit margin, a healthy, like just hard value profit per sale opportunity that you don't have with lots of your other revenue streams. So if you have a captive audience in the, tens to hundreds of thousands, you can have a very sustainable upper level income. And that's like kind of been our central point here for the longest time. Point being is that like you're kind of still in this fast fashion space. You're selling hot topic graphic tees. Like you're not making the money that clothing companies make.
Yeah.
You're making the money that like licensing arms of television shows can possibly make. And it's a little bit different. And that's why, like, if artists weren't operating in that space, they would never find it appropriate to use print on demand in a production environment.
Right.
But because they are fast fashion, they find it okay to do. But if you can find a local brand, like if you live near a major city, there are kids who cut and stitch.
Yeah.
One of my friends, Drex, he started a clothing brand called Last Call with his friend Jose, who awesome, super creative dude. Now like starting to make real strides in the fashion world, like starting to get some recognition, starting to have shows, all this stuff. But he sells garments. Like he makes and sells garments. Very artistic individual. And there are brands like that, streetwear or fashion brands that are similarly indie as you are in your city probably, or in your nearest major metro. And if you can seek them out and find opportunities to collaborate with them, that actually puts you in the garment space.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about much higher levels of potential like income profit margin per sale. And it's actually a better, because like, look, if I'm a fan of do I need graphic tees? Yeah, I've got like 80% of my tops are like graphic tees. So yeah, I do need graphic tees. But that said, if I buy a garment, it's going to last longer. I'm going to preserve it more. I'm actually going to like only wear, like if I buy a nice enough like t-shirt or shirt rather, I actually will only wear it out to the place I want to wear it at. And I will take it off immediately when I get home. And I will avoid having to machine wash it for as long as possible to preserve it. It clearly means more. And it's okay that it costs more too, because I care about it more than a graphic tee. I'm okay with a graphic tee dying. Whereas I'm less okay with like a cut and stitch, like garment dying, right? And so it puts you in a different atmosphere in terms of the profit margin, what it means, how long people will keep it, the sort of purchasing decision it represents to people. The whole psychology of it is different than just a graphic tee, $20, $25. And that's a huge opportunity for you. Will it introduce your music to a bunch of new fans? No, likely not. But it will get that designer more fans from your fan base, and it will give you other affordances that you couldn't get any other way unless you were willing to start a cut and stitch brand, garment brand. So I think that's like a super great point you made, Jack, is like, that's a great place to collaborate, because what you're getting, it's not exactly just like a pure trade-off like it would be with another artist. They're getting something they're not providing you, and you're getting something you're not providing them. It's truly an economy that you're creating.
Yeah, 100%. It's a cool, different look at collaboration. That it almost is like looking at like a business partnership, right? What do you bring to the table? What do I bring to the table? How are those skills or attributes different and complementary? And with brand collaborations and associations, you really can think differently than how you might think about just collaborating with another artist or another band, where it might mostly live in the audience sharing and artistic side of things for eventual profit in sales. You're right. With brand, you can also think a bit more about the intangibles, and that can be really powerful. And like you said, and I wasn't even going this direction, but I'm so glad you brought it up. Like the elevation of your brand and specifically like your merch, that can be huge because you can then sort of ride that wave beyond that. Now, are you going to turn into a cut and sew kind of company? Probably not. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll prove me wrong. But do I think you'll do one brand collaboration for merch and then immediately pivot all of your merch for the rest of eternity into cut and sew? Probably not. But you'll have an elevation amongst your customer base. They will start to see your product as greater than what they might just find at Hot Topic, like you said, or fast fashion stuff. You're laying the foundation for what you can do at a deeper level in the like direct to fan, direct to consumer e-commerce side of things. And that's really cool.
Yeah. And almost all of the artists that have cut and sew brands now started off collaborating with a cut and sew brand. Sean John started off as a collaboration. You know what I mean? So it's like very, very common to start off with a business that already has those economies of scale in place. You're bringing the brand and the fan base. They're bringing the infrastructure, and then it can develop from there. But like, that's obviously a way bigger case than what we're talking about. We're talking about individually. You can go seek out independent cut and sew designers, creators in your nearest cultural mecca, right? And find ones that you like and then see collaborations that way. And it actually exposes you to the economics of clothing sales in a way that, like, I think behooves you as an artist to know about, to have access to start getting your feet wet there.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is good stuff. I hope this helps you guys think differently about collaborations and what it can do for you. I hope these stories were insightful, and I hope you can think about leveraging the audiences of your collaborators and also the brand associations when you do collaborate and what that can do for you in your music career. Hope you guys dug this. We'll catch you later. See you next time on Creative Juice. Peace.